In the second example in your notes, we're going to be taking a look at this shape right here. Now I have a few things that I want to go over with this shape, so I'm going to be kind of bouncing between actually solving for it and mentioning some things to watch out for. But here we have a rectangular prism with a half cylinder on top. Okay, and we want to find the surface area of just the visible parts. Now I mentioned that I'm going to show you kind of another way of solving for these composite objects where we don't do as much subtracting. There's times when we don't. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. So let's get started here by firstly labeling the shapes that we have. So we have one shape on top and we have one shape on the bottom, okay, or one object of each. The one on top, okay, is a half cylinder. Okay, it is half a cylinder. You'll notice that it's kind of been a cylinder cut down the middle and then placed on top. So that's our half cylinder. So we only have to find the area of half a cylinder. On the bottom, we have this rectangular prism. We have a rectangular prism on the bottom. So a half cylinder has been placed on top of the rectangular prism. Now, what you'll notice here, again, with this half cylinder, we only need to find half of the cylinder. So that's pretty important to know. So when we solve for that one, and I'm going to start off, I'll start off with that one a little later. We need to only find half the cylinder. The rectangular prism you'll notice here, normally a rectangular prism has 6 sides. In this case, only 5 of them are visible. Okay, the top piece is not visible at all. So if we recognize that, we don't actually have to solve for the top side and then subtract it. We can just not solve for it because then we don't have to subtract it later off. Okay, so that's something to be careful for and make sure that we recognize if we don't necessarily need to add pieces on if we don't want to, okay? Or sorry, if we're going to just subtract them off. Okay, so we don't need to add pieces on if we're going to subtract them off right away. Now, other thing to be aware of here, we only have 2 measurements. We have this one right here and we have this length right here, but we know that this length is the same as this length, same as one on the back. So we don't need to write in that 10 meters everywhere. And the 6 meters, this is a square. You'll notice by these little lines, that represents that all those sides are the same measurement. So they're all 6 meters. That means that this side, this side, this side, and this side are all exactly 6 meters. So that tells us that this piece of our cylinder is also 6 meters. So let's start off, and I'm going to do a little bit of, I'm going to have to do a little bit of cramming here. It's going to be a bit of a tight space. We want to find the surface area of the rectangular prism first. Now I'm going to show you another way to, here's another way of describing it. I have surface area and then I have RP as just a little bit in a subscript. It just kind of shows that it's not, or it just represents that we're finding the surface area of the rectangular prism. To find the area of the rectangular prism, we're going to first find the front and the back. Okay, the front is a square, the back is a square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type this in as 2 times 6 squared. Now, again, like I said, I'm going to squeeze this in a bit, so I'm not going to use units until the end, but I will put them in later. 6 squared is the area of our square. Okay, there's 2 of them, so I multiply by 2. The next piece is this bottom piece, or this side piece here. It's a 10 by 6. Now, because this is a square-based prism, each of these sides is the same. So there are 3 of those sides. Side, side, bottom. They're all exactly the same. So I'm going to do 3 times 10 times 6. Move that in a little bit more because we've got a bit more room. Now, I just do the calculations. So surface area of my rectangular pyramid or prism, could also be pyramid as well, but we're going to rectangular prism is 2 times 6 squared plus 3 times 10 times 6. And I get a total of 252 meters squared. Now notice I'm putting the units in here. Even though I didn't have them on top, I'm putting them in my answer so that I know that this is in meters squared. All right, so that's the rectangular prism. Now again, I don't have to subtract anything off of here because I didn't add in that top side, which is unseen. So I only added the sides which are seen. And that's a great option. It is completely viable and good to do that. All right, next piece, we now want to find this half cylinder. Well, a half cylinder, what we're going to do here is we're going to find a full cylinder, and then we're going to divide by 2. Okay, so we're going to find the full cylinder, surface area of a cylinder, and I'm going to do Cy for that one, is equal to 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. And then when it's all said and done, I'm going to divide that whole answer in half. So to find the full cylinder, surface area of the cylinder is equal to 2 times pi times the radius, which is 6 meters squared. I've got a little more room here. 2 times pi times 6 meters times 10 meters. And that's the height. 6. There we go. And we get that our surface area, and again, now I'll put in actually here half cylinder. Say a little h is half cylinder, is going to be 2 times pi times 6 squared plus 2 times pi times 6 times 10 is 603.19 meters squared. Now that is rounded. And I want to divide that by 2. If I divide it by 2, I'm going to get 301.59 meters squared. 301.59 meters squared. Now, some of you might have noticed that I actually made a mistake on this here. Okay, and I'm going to point that out just as a part of this video because that's something that's good to see. The diameter is 6, the radius is only 3. So I got to replace this here, and that will change it. Okay, that's going to change my numbers here. Let's just redo it really quickly. 3 squared plus 2 times pi times 3 times 10. It is actually 245.04 square meters. And when we divide that by 2, it's 122.52 square meters. Now, there we go. I made a little mistake. I was able to catch it. One of the things that turned me onto that was the fact that this half cylinder, which looks pretty small, was apparently bigger than my rectangular prism. Okay, that part kind of turned me on there to make sure that I knew that I was making a mistake. Okay, so mistakes are okay. We make them. I even made them as a part of this video. I've corrected it. So that is a good thing. I've made that correction. Now, we found the rectangular prism without the missing side on the bottom. We found the half cylinder, which doesn't have that missing side because, well, we just didn't add it in. Okay, so all we need to do now is add these two together to come up with our final answer. So I'm going to use, again, a little bit of subscript hand here. And I'm going to say T for total. So surface area total is going to equal 252 meters squared plus 122.52 meters squared. And then again, all we're doing is we're adding them together because we've already taken care of the subtracting. We didn't actually do any subtracting because we didn't add any of the pieces that needed to be subtracted. 374.52 meters squared. Again, if we don't need to, we don't have to add in those pieces that we can't see. Okay, the previous example, I'm just going to slide up here, we almost needed to because this square or this rectangle, we don't want to we have to subtract off the circle as it is. Okay, there are other ways of doing that as well, and you can, if you have a different way, glad to use that. But in this case here, we had a full side missing, we just didn't add that side in.